everybody. Well, it's the start of our show. Now, we have a special guest tonight. In 1988, he was the Democratic nominee for president. Please welcome Governor Michael S. Dukakis. Thank you for coming tonight.
Happy to be here.
It's really an honor to have you here. How about it, everybody? Michael Now, let's talk. We were lucky enough to come meet you out at Northeastern University where you're teaching. Thank you for letting us have that interview with you. Let's tell people at home right now what you're teaching and how hard is it to get in your class?
Well, I teach what I'm supposed to know something about, Steve. So it's public policy, public management. I teach health policy and politics. I've taught state and local government. I teach a lot. People say to me, what course do you teach? I teach 6 of them. Yeah, it's kind of difficult, but I'm tough. You know, I have a reputation for demanding a lot from my students, but I think they get a lot out of these courses. So we always have more people than I can accommodate. And I'm not a guy that wants, more than 40 is max for me, because I want to get to know my students personally. I want to know them by their first names. I want to be able to work with them, and I spend a lot of time with them. So.
Do they come seek you out trying to get in your class?
Yeah.
And what do you tell them?
If I can do it, I'll do it. But no more than 40, max.
Well, that's great. We're glad that you're teaching here at Northeastern University. Now, we're in Arlington, Massachusetts, and this obviously is the home.
I spent some time here when I was a kid.
And your cousin, Olympia Dukakis, and her brother, Apollo, went to Arlington High School, which is where a lot of our people that work on the show go to. We have high school students that work on the show.
39 Russell Street. I remember it well. I remember it well.
Do you have any memories of Arlington that you could share with us?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, my cousin Olympia and her family lived in Lowell first, and then moved to Somerville and subsequently to Arlington. And they bought this very big old Victorian on Russell Street for a song in 1940. This was just at the end of the Great Depression, and real estate values were way, way down. So I remember spending a lot of time there, and I remember, is there a river behind there where we skated? There's some kind of river behind on Russell Street.
Maybe?
Is it Spy Pond? Yeah. Where we skated, played, spent a lot of time over there. And we were very close as cousins. There were 6 Dukakis first cousins. 5 of us were boys. Poor Olympia was the only.
And you said something.
And she took a lot of punishment.
You said something interesting. You didn't even know that she wanted to be an actress because in high school.
She was a great athlete. She was a basketball player back when you can only dribble 3 times if you were a girl. And somehow she got into fencing classes, and Olympia became a junior fencing champion. You imagine a Greek kid as a fencer.
Watch out.
And went to BU to become a physical therapist on a March of Dimes scholarship. And then, because the scholarship required her to do physical therapy, she was part of those teams in those days that when there was a polio outbreak, they would move into these communities because the only thing we knew how to do with these kids was to do physical therapy on them. And in fact, she contracted polio at one point. Fortunately, it was non-paralytic.
Wow.
So I thought of her as a physical therapist, somebody who was involved, great athlete and stuff. Next thing I know, she's at BU in the theater arts program. Then she's coming to me. By that time, I was practicing law to represent this group of young pals of hers at the school that wanted to create a summer theater and all this kind of stuff. And then she went off to New York.
And the rest was history.
Not only that, but you remember when she won the Oscar. Only Olympia would hold it up and say, okay, Michael, let's go. In front of 1 billion people. She's wonderful. She's just terrific. Still going strong, still doing great stuff.
You know, we love that moment. We all remember it. And obviously, we remember when you got the Democratic nomination. And you told me in an earlier interview that that was probably one of the best days in your political life. I just want to ask you, what was going through your mind at that point? I know your mom was there in the balcony. And so what were you thinking at that point?
That was very important to me. I mean, here, my dad unfortunately had passed away, but my mother was 85. She had campaigned all over the country for me. And there she was up there, in the family box watching this young Greek immigrant girl coming here at the age of 9 to Haverhill, Massachusetts. And her son has just been nominated for the presidency of the United States. And it was a very emotional moment for her and for me. Unfortunately, we peaked in Atlanta. But I often say these days, I owe you all an apology. If I'd beaten Bush 1, Steve, you'd have never heard of Bush 2, and we wouldn't be in this mess. So it's all my fault.
No, it's not your fault.
Blame me.
You had your message out there, and it was great growing up here in
I
Arlington.
needed you to be my communications
I'm here
director.
now. You ready to go again? What about it? Mike Dukakis, everybody! It was great growing up here, and my parents had the Dukakis signs on the lawn, and we were supporting you 100%, and they love you to this day. Look at that.
Thank you. Well, the Greek community across the country was just remarkable. I mean, whether it was 200,000 Greek Americans in Chicago or some guy running a little pizza place in a small town in Iowa, I mean, they were just wonderful. Very proud and just very supportive of me, I'll tell you. They were just terrific.
I wanted to ask you now, obviously we have a Democratic president, Barack Obama, and what do you think about today? Because a lot of people are down on the government, what's happening here in the United States. What do you think about this situation
Look, when
with
the
him?
economy's down, people are down. I mean, there it is. Now, I happen to like him. I think he's done a pretty good job under very difficult circumstances. Don't ask me to comment on whatever is going on the Republican side. I've never seen anything quite like this. You know, it's somebody gets thrown off the island about every 2 or 3 weeks here in this reality show. And apparently we're now down to Gingrich and Romney. So I don't know what's going to happen. But I'm very concerned, Steve, because these new folks on the Republican side that have arrived in Congress have a very different philosophy from not only mine, but I think most Americans. You're not going to get out of this recession with austerity. You know, they're trying that in Greece, and it isn't working. And this is a great time to invest in this country's infrastructure, put people to work, and get this country moving again. And these folks don't want to do this. So it's going to be an important year next year. It's going to have a lot to do with whether or not we get out of this recession and get people back to work and put this country back in the kind of shape it ought to be in.
Let me ask you this now. There are some young people out there, and they're in college. They're deciding what to do with their life, and we talked about this as well. What advice do you have for these young people about going into public service, and how do they become successful at that?
Well, it's why I teach, Steve, both at Northeastern and, as you know, during the winter quarter at UCLA. I mean, I want these kids to take public service seriously. We need good public servants. We need honest public servants. We need competent public servants. And the reason I teach and teach a lot is because I want to do everything I can to encourage young people to go into public service and have the kind of opportunities I've had to try as best they can to make a difference in their communities and state and country. And believe me, you can. So I want our best young people to take public service seriously in whatever way makes sense to them, whether it's local, state, national, internationally. And let me tell you, we're producing some great young people in this country. I'm teaching them at 2 great universities, and they're terrific. And they're fun to teach, they're an inspiration. And I love Northeastern particularly because, as you know, it's got that co-op program where our kids are working as well as studying, and it gives them an opportunity to work in public service during the course of their undergraduate career. I've got a young woman who's going to be doing a co-op in Washington this coming 6 months for the Chief of Staff of the White House. I've got another one working for a member of Congress. I've got folks working in state government. And it's just great to see them get into this public service that has been my life and develop the kinds of skills. They're the future, and let me tell you, they're terrific. Don't kid yourself. We're producing some fabulous young people, and it's a great privilege for me to be able to teach them.
Listen, I want to thank you for coming. And I know you mentioned one of your favorite moments was when you accepted the Democratic nomination and your mother was there. This is one of my favorite moments. You're one of my heroes. I've got my wife, my mom, and dad. Thank you for coming here, Mr. Dukakis. I appreciate that. Governor Michael Dukakis, everybody. We'll be right back.